I always believed loyalty was a two-way street. For 8 years, I poured my heart into Atlantic Media Group, working 80-hour weeks and sacrificing weekends while my marriage crumbled. Greg, my boss, became like family, the father figure I never had growing up in Nebraska. "You're next in line, Archie," he'd say, patting my shoulder. When the promotion rumors started, colleagues congratulated me weeks before the announcement. Then came that unforgettable Friday when everything I believed about friendship, loyalty, and my own worth collapsed around me. Before I continue, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever trusted someone who didn't deserve it. Your support helps stories like mine reach others who need to hear them. I grew up in a small Nebraska town with just my mom after my dad took off when I was 4. We never had much, but Mom worked 2 jobs to make sure I had opportunities she never did. I was the first in my family to go to college, working nights at a local diner to help pay tuition at the University of Nebraska. Those early years taught me that nothing worth having comes without sacrifice and hard work. After graduation, I headed to Atlanta with nothing but 2 suitcases and determination. The big city was intimidating at first, so different from the open plains and familiar faces back home. I spent 3 months sending out resumes before finally landing a junior marketing strategist position at Atlantic Media Group. The company was growing fast, specializing in digital marketing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. I was just happy to get my foot in the door. That was when I met Greg Williamson, the charismatic CEO, who would change the course of my life. He was in his mid-50s, always dressed in crisp suits with that trademark red tie, and had a way of making everyone feel important. During my second week, I stayed until 9 p.m. working on a pitch deck. Greg happened to walk by my cubicle, stopped, and actually took the time to review my work. "You think differently, Archie," he said, blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "That is exactly what we need around here. Too many people recycle the same old ideas." After that night, Greg took a special interest in my career. He invited me to sit in on executive meetings, asked for my input on major campaigns, and eventually became the mentor I had always wished for. He shared stories about building the company from scratch, his failures along the way, and lessons that no business school could teach. I soaked up every word. My dedication to Atlantic Media Group became all-consuming. I led the rebranding campaign for Southern Financial that increased their customer acquisition by 75%. I developed the viral marketing strategy for Tech Future that generated 23 million views and 12 million in new revenue. I was the first one in, last one out, and volunteered for the projects no one else wanted. Success followed success, and each win made me feel more at home. But that dedication came with a price. Emma, my wife of 5 years, grew increasingly frustrated with my absence. "It is like I am married to your company," she would say, arms crossed as I packed my laptop for yet another weekend at the office. I always thought there would be time to fix things after the next big project or once I secured my position. I was wrong. The divorce papers came on a Tuesday morning, delivered to my office, because she knew that was the only place she could find me. The irony was not lost on me. I had built a work family while losing my real one. Jessica, our creative director, with her wild curly hair and brutal honesty, became my closest confidant. Kyle from analytics, with his dad jokes and quiet intelligence, became the brother I never had. We celebrated birthdays, survived impossible deadlines, and built something that felt meaningful together. When Linda, our chief marketing officer, announced her retirement after 20 years, the office immediately buzzed with speculation about her replacement. Greg pulled me into his office that same afternoon. "You have been preparing for this moment, Archie," he said, leaning forward across his mahogany desk. "Keep doing what you are doing. The board notices more than you think." For the next 3 months, Greg continued to drop hints about my future with the company. "We need someone with your vision leading marketing," he would say during strategy sessions. Or, "When you are in the big office, remember where you came from." Each comment reinforced my belief that the promotion was all but guaranteed. My colleagues seemed to think so too. "Better start practicing your executive signature," Jessica teased one afternoon. Even Frank from accounting, who rarely spoke to anyone, stopped me in the hallway to say he had heard good things about my future. The first hint that something was off came when Greg canceled our weekly lunch meetings 3 weeks in a row. Budget planning, his assistant explained with an apologetic smile. I thought nothing of it. End of quarter was always hectic, and I was busy finalizing the holiday marketing campaign. Then Jessica pulled me aside after a department meeting. I saw Greg having dinner at Marcel last night with some young guy I did not recognize. They looked pretty chummy, and they were reviewing what looked like marketing decks. Our marketing decks. I dismissed her concern with a laugh. Probably just a potential client or new hire. Greg is always working some angle. In my mind, our relationship was too solid for secrets. I trusted him completely. When the company-wide email announced an important leadership update for Friday morning, I assumed it would be my moment. I went shopping that weekend for a new suit, midnight blue, with subtle pinstripes that Emma would have approved of. I rehearsed my acceptance speech in the shower and made notes about the direction I wanted to take the marketing department. The first real warning came on Wednesday when Diane from HR sent a calendar invite to discuss performance reviews. She had never done that before. When I arrived at her office, her usual warm smile seemed strained. "Just some routine questions about your team evaluations," she said, shuffling papers nervously. "There seem to be some inconsistencies we need to address." The inconsistencies in my performance reviews were just the beginning. Documents that had originally rated me as exceptional now showed meets expectations in key categories. Comments about my leadership potential had been removed entirely. When I questioned these changes, Diane merely said, "These are the versions in our official system." That afternoon, I confronted Greg in the hallway outside his office. "Do you have a minute to talk about my performance reviews?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual despite the knot in my stomach. Greg checked his watch and frowned. "Sorry, Archie, I am slammed today. Let us catch up next week, all right?" His eyes never quite met mine, and he was already moving past me before I could respond. The man who once spent hours mentoring me could not spare 5 minutes. The next day, Greg called an impromptu team meeting to introduce Harrison Andrews, a 23-year-old recent Harvard graduate with perfectly styled brown hair and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Harrison comes to us from my good friend Thomas Andrews at Pinnacle Investments," Greg announced, beaming like a proud father. "He brings fresh perspective and innovative ideas that will help take us to the next level." I smiled and shook Harrison's hand, ignoring the sinking feeling in my chest. Throughout the meeting, Greg repeatedly turned to Harrison for input, while my suggestions were met with quick nods before moving on. Later that afternoon, a company-wide email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "Welcoming Harrison Andrews to our leadership team." The message praised Harrison's exceptional academic background and forward-thinking approach to digital marketing, despite the fact that he had zero actual industry experience. Jessica found me staring at my computer screen. "You need to see this," she whispered, pulling up a folder on her tablet. She had compiled emails between Greg and various board members spanning the last 6 months. In them, Greg subtly undermined my contributions while taking credit for my most successful campaigns. The Tech Future strategy was something I have been developing for years. One email from Greg read, "Archie helped implement the basics, but the vision was mine." Another claimed the Southern Financial rebranding had required significant reworking at the executive level, despite the client's glowing feedback about my original work. The betrayal cut deep, but worse was yet to come. The following Monday, Greg called me into his office. Harrison was already seated in what had always been my chair. "Archie, I would like you to show Harrison the ropes of our marketing department," Greg said casually. "Consider it a special assignment. He will be shadowing you for the next few weeks." "Shadowing me for what purpose exactly?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Just to learn how things work around here," Greg replied with a dismissive wave. "Harrison has brilliant ideas, but he needs to understand our day-to-day operations." Over the next 2 weeks, Harrison followed me everywhere. He sat in on my client meetings, reviewed my strategy documents, and asked endless questions. But there was something calculating in his manner. He was not there to learn from me, but to replace me. Harrison made no attempt to hide his arrogance. "That approach is pretty outdated," he would comment during strategy sessions. "At Harvard, we learned that engagement metrics are far more valuable than conversion rates." Never mind that our conversion-focused campaigns had generated millions in revenue. One Tuesday morning, Kyle stopped by my desk, looking uncomfortable. "I thought you should know," he said quietly. "Harrison was in the executive budget meeting yesterday, the one you usually attend." "There must be some mistake," I said. I was not notified about any change. Kyle shook his head. No mistake. Greg introduced him as the new marketing lead. That same afternoon, I overheard Greg and Harrison laughing in the break room. These old-school marketing dinosaurs just do not get it, Harrison was saying. Social media is more than just posting content. It is about creating an experience. Greg nodded enthusiastically. That is exactly why we need your perspective, Harrison. Fresh blood. The systematic dismantling of my position continued. Clients I had personally brought in and nurtured for years were suddenly redirected to Harrison for fresh perspective. Projects I had initiated were reassigned. When the quarterly planning meeting rolled around, my name was conspicuously absent from the invitation list. I tried accessing our shared marketing server to retrieve files for an ongoing campaign, only to find that several key folders had been moved. When I asked our IT department about it, they informed me that Harrison had requested the files be transferred to a new server for organizational purposes. Even Jessica started receiving warnings. Marge from HR pulled me aside yesterday, she told me during our coffee break. She said I should be careful about being too closely associated with you professionally. What does that even mean? As the announcement date approached, the evidence mounted against my promotion. My office plant, a peace lily Emma had given me when I first started, was moved from my desk to a windowsill in the common area. My parking spot, unofficially reserved for years, was reassigned to executive team members. Small changes, but their message was clear. Friday morning arrived with an oppressive weight of certainty. The main conference room was packed by 9 a.m., unusual for our typically late-starting colleagues. I took a seat near the back while Jessica slid in beside me, with a supportive squeeze of my arm. Greg stood at the front, immaculate as always, in his tailored suit flanked by board members and senior executives. Harrison sat in the front row, spine straight and expression smug. The room hummed with anticipation. "Thank you all for coming today," Greg began his voice, carrying that practiced warmth that once felt so genuine to me. Atlantic Media Group stands at a pivotal moment. The marketing landscape is evolving faster than ever, and we must evolve with it. He continued with a 15-minute speech about new blood and fresh perspectives and the future direction of the company. Each word felt like a nail in the coffin of my career. I maintained a neutral expression, years of client meetings having taught me how to mask disappointment. It is with great pleasure Greg finally announced that I introduce our new Chief Marketing Officer, Harrison Andrews, effective immediately. Applause filled the room, but I noticed several colleagues shooting confused glances my way. They had expected a different announcement. Harrison stood and buttoned his jacket with practiced ease, then strode to the front of the room like he was born for this moment. Throughout the entire announcement, Greg never once looked in my direction. 8 years of loyalty, of sacrificing weekends and holidays, of generating millions in revenue, all of it meaningless in the end. Harrison's acceptance speech was brief, but pointed. "I am honored to lead this team into a new era of digital marketing excellence," he said, blue eyes scanning the room. "I want to thank Archie for his years of service. I know he will be an important support during this transition. Support during the transition. Not colleague, not partner, but support like an outdated computer system, kept around until the new one is fully operational." The room spun slightly as 8 years of dedication collapsed around me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sweat beaded at my hairline. Each breath became more difficult than the last as I sat there smiling politely while something fundamental broke inside me. I had built my entire identity around this company, around Greg's mentorship, around the promise of recognition that would never come. Under the conference table, Jessica squeezed my hand, a small gesture of solidarity, in a moment of complete betrayal. I squeezed back, grateful for at least one true friend in a room full of people who would follow the new power structure without question. The required champagne toast followed. Crystal flutes appeared on silver trays, and congratulatory murmurs filled the air. I stood in the corner, clutching my untouched champagne, nodding mechanically when colleagues approached with awkward condolences disguised as congratulations. "You will get the next one," they said. "Harrison has connections, but you have experience." Empty platitudes that changed nothing. After 20 minutes of this torture, Greg finally approached me. Up close, I could see the slight flush of guilt on his neck, the only indication that he recognized the magnitude of his betrayal. "Archie, I know this is not what you expected," he began, voice lowered. But the board felt we needed someone with Harrison's connections and background. His connections, I repeated flatly. You mean his father's connections. Greg had the decency to look uncomfortable. We are creating a senior strategist position for you. More money, fewer administrative headaches, plus a 15% raise, a consolation prize, a way to keep me around without the title or authority I had earned. I nodded without committing, unable to trust my voice with a response. The final indignity came that afternoon. I returned from lunch to find my corner office, the one I had worked toward for years with its view of downtown Atlanta, emptied of my belongings. Harrison's monogrammed leather portfolio sat on the desk that had been mine that morning. I followed the sound of shuffling to a storage room down the hall where I found 3 cardboard boxes containing my degrees, awards, and 8 years of personal items. My name was scrawled across each box in black marker like artifacts from a previous administration. Kyle found me standing there staring at the boxes. "I am so sorry, Archie," he said, genuine pain in his voice. "This is not right." "How long has this been planned?" I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Kyle hesitated before answering. 6 months minimum. Harrison's father and Greg have been golfing buddies for years. Thomas Andrews promised to bring 3 major financial clients to us if his son got a leadership position. 6 months of lies, 6 months of mentorship. That was really just monitoring. 6 months of Greg assessing whether I would be a problem when the time came. I made it to my car in the parking garage before the first sob escaped. Sitting behind the wheel, I finally allowed the full weight of the betrayal to crash over me. Everything I thought I knew about my career, about my mentor, about my worth to this company, had been an elaborate fiction. I had been a placeholder, keeping the seat warm until someone with better connections came along. The weekend passed in a blur of ignored calls and text messages. I shut off my phone, drew the blinds in my apartment, and tried to process what had happened. Greg called 6 times. Jessica texted her concern. Even Harrison sent an email suggesting we touch base before Monday. I responded to none of them. Instead, I pulled out my employment contract and read every line with new eyes. The intellectual property clauses caught my attention, specifically the sections about attribution and credit for marketing strategies. I had never paid much attention to these details before, trusting that my contributions would be recognized fairly. Sunday morning, I called Thomas Wyatt, an employment attorney a college friend had recommended years ago. "I need to understand my options," I explained after outlining my situation. "Bring everything you have on Monday," Thomas said. "Emails, performance reviews, campaign results, anything that documents your contributions." I spent the rest of Sunday creating a detailed portfolio of every campaign I had designed and executed over the past 8 years. Revenue-generated, client testimonials, original concepts, all carefully documented and organized. The Atlantic Media Group had made millions from my ideas, while Greg took the credit, and Harrison would reap the rewards. Monday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Instead of my normal routine, I walked directly to the office of Diane Mercer, one of our longest-serving board members. Her assistant tried to stop me, but I politely insisted it was urgent. "Archie," Diane said, surprised to see me standing in her doorway. "I was going to call you today. I need 15 minutes of your time," I replied calmly, "and I believe you will want to hear what I have to say." Diane gestured to the chair across from her desk, curiosity evident in her expression. I placed my portfolio on her desk and opened to the first page, a comprehensive timeline of the campaigns I had developed, the revenue they generated, and the gradual erasure of my contributions from company records. "This is concerning," she said after reviewing several pages. "But why come to me directly?" "Because you have been here longer than Greg," I answered honestly, "and because you value truth over politics." By that afternoon, I had met with 2 more board members, each more troubled than the last by the evidence I presented. James Holden, our CFO, was particularly disturbed by the financial implications. "These campaigns were presented to us as Greg's strategic initiatives," he said, frowning at the documentation. "The board approved bonuses based on that understanding." Word spread quickly. Harrison was called into an impromptu meeting where board members questioned him about campaigns he claimed to understand. According to Kyle, who was asked to provide the analytics data, Harrison stumbled through explanations of strategies he had previously criticized. He kept saying he would revamp everything anyway, When pressed for specifics, Kyle reported during our hasty lunch outside the building. Greg grew increasingly frantic as the day progressed. I watched from my temporary desk in the communal area as he rushed between executive offices, his normally composed demeanor cracking. He tried calling me into his office twice, but I politely declined, citing pressing deadlines. By Tuesday, 3 competing agencies had somehow heard about the situation and reached out with job offers. I thanked them, but explained I was not ready to make any decisions. This was no longer about finding another position. It was about standing my ground and addressing the injustice directly. Wednesday brought the announcement of an emergency board meeting. Greg spent the morning locked in his office with legal counsel. Harrison was notably absent, having called in sick for the 2nd consecutive day. Jessica stopped by my desk, excitement barely contained. The board asked for all communication between Greg and Harrison's father going back 18 months, she whispered, and they are reviewing the changes to your performance evaluations. Thursday morning, the company gathered once again in the main conference room. This time, Diane Mercer stood at the front, flanked by James and other board members. Greg sat to the side, face ashen. After careful review of concerning information brought to our attention, Diane began. The board has made several decisions regarding leadership at Atlantic Media Group. She announced Greg's resignation effective immediately, citing ethical concerns regarding personnel decisions and attribution of work product. Harrison had been reassigned to a junior position in the research department, a face-saving measure that everyone understood was temporary at best. Then Diane turned to me. Archie, this company owes you both an apology and a debt of gratitude. Your contributions have been the backbone of our success for years, and that deserves recognition. The board would like to offer you the position of Chief Marketing Officer effective immediately. The room erupted in applause, genuine this time, with colleagues standing and cheering. The vindication was overwhelming, but I maintained my composure as I walked to the front of the room. Before accepting, I negotiated terms that protected not just my position but my work. I insisted on documentation processes that ensured proper attribution for all team members' contributions. I requested a complete overhaul of the performance review system to prevent future manipulation. The board agreed to everything. My first actions as CMO were focused on rebuilding a culture of merit and collaboration. I promoted Jessica to Deputy CMO, recognizing both her loyalty and her exceptional creative talent. I established a mentorship program that identified promising employees regardless of their connections or background. Most importantly, I created transparent processes for recognition and advancement. No more whispered promises or subjective evaluations. Everyone would know exactly where they stood and what they needed to do to advance. Under this new approach, Atlantic Media Group transformed. Team members who had been quietly contributing for years suddenly flourished when given proper recognition. Campaigns became truly collaborative rather than competitive. Client satisfaction reached record highs. 1 year later, Atlantic Media Group announced its most successful quarter in company history. The team we built had reinvented our approach to digital marketing, combining innovative strategies with the transparent culture that had become our hallmark. I sat in my office. Not the corner suite I had once coveted, but a glass-walled space in the center of our main floor where anyone could see me and approach with ideas. The symbolic location had been my choice, a physical representation of the leadership style I believed in. The betrayal that had nearly broken me had instead freed me from seeking external validation. I no longer measured my worth by titles or approval from authority figures. The respect of my team, earned through honesty and recognition of their contributions, meant far more than any corner office. Emma and I had reconnected as friends, healing old wounds through honest conversations about our failed marriage. "You seem different now," she observed during a casual lunch. "More present. More you." She was right. The painful experience had stripped away the person I thought I needed to be and revealed who I actually was. The most unexpected moment of closure came 6 months after the leadership change. Greg requested to meet for lunch at a small cafe downtown. He looked older, the confident swagger replaced by a quieter demeanor. He was working at a smaller agency, now starting over in many ways. "I owe you an apology," he said after we ordered, though his tone suggested he still did not fully understand the magnitude of his actions. Things got complicated with the Andrews account. I made choices I am not proud of. I studied the man I had once revered, feeling neither anger nor satisfaction at his downfall. We all make choices, I replied simply. I am making different ones now. He nodded, perhaps hoping for absolution I was not there to give. We finished lunch with polite conversation, and when we parted ways, I felt the last weight of that betrayal lift from my shoulders. The leadership team I built at Atlantic Media Group reflected my deepest values: transparency, recognition, and genuine collaboration. We celebrated each person's contributions publicly and addressed challenges directly. Profits soared not despite this approach, but because of it, clients responded to the authentic energy of our campaigns. On a personal level, life expanded beyond work. I met Sophia, a children's book illustrator who challenged my perspective and respected my newfound commitment to work-life balance. For the first time, I built a relationship without sacrificing my identity to someone else's expectations. The deepest lesson from that painful betrayal was learning to trust my own worth beyond others' validation. Success, built on connections, without merit, is always temporary. True achievement comes from authentic contribution and the courage to stand in your truth, even when no one else is standing with you. Looking back, I would not change what happened. That betrayal became the foundation for something far stronger than what was lost. It taught me to recognize the difference between allies who celebrate your success and connections who use your talents for their advancement. There is a peace that comes from standing firmly in your truth regardless of outcome. Had I not fought back, I would have carried the weight of that injustice forever. By confronting it directly, I not only reclaimed my professional standing, but discovered a version of myself I never knew existed. Someone who valued integrity over approval and courage over comfort. What painful experience taught you an unexpected lesson? Drop a comment below and share your story. We heal through connection, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more authentic stories about overcoming life's challenges. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that betrayal is often the beginning of something better, not the end of their story. Thank you for listening. Your support means more than you know.